Welcome back. We're really glad you're here to listen to the second half of this book. Chapter 4. Kim's Counterattack, North Korea's Hacker VC, and the Sony Mess. Chapter 4 takes us straight into the darkest, most aggressive core of cyber warfare, the state-level weapons vault. It starts by introducing a unit that's a complete mystery to the public, but a legend in the intel world: TAO, Tailored Access Operations. Think of them as the Navy SEALs of the digital world. They don't do basic surveillance, they specialize in high-difficulty infiltration. The book reveals that TAO's arsenal is straight out of a sci-fi movie. They have a product catalog thicker than a phone book, filled with backdoors for almost every type of hardware on Earth. For example, if you order a brand new computer, they could intercept the package while it's in transit, crack it open, install a hardware spy chip, reseal it, and send it on its way. You'd literally never know. Their most powerful weapon was a flaw in Microsoft Windows, codenamed Eternal Blue. After the NSA discovered this vulnerability, they didn't tell Microsoft. Instead, they kept it a secret, turning it into their own master key that could hack into almost any computer in any country at any time. Part 1. The Garage Sale on Tumblr. Then Chapter 4 shifts from government agencies to the underground world, describing a scene that's honestly hard to believe. A digital auction on Tumblr. Not the dark web, not some secret hacker forum, but Tumblr, the social platform usually known for aesthetic photos and art blogs. In 2016, a mysterious group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers appeared. They set up shop on mainstream platforms like Tumblr and Twitter, posting screenshots of code and telling the world, "Hey, we stole the keys to the NSA's gun safe. Who wants them? Bring your cash and start bidding." This was a devastating blow to the NSA. Imagine you're the world's top secret agent, only to find out the keys to your armory were stolen, and someone is selling your grenades and pistols at a flea market in broad daylight. The craziest part? No one knew who these guys were. Some thought it was Russian revenge, others thought it was an inside leak. The auction eventually failed because the price wasn't right, so the hackers did something even more extreme. They just released the source code for Eternal Blue and other top-tier weapons for free. Anyone could download them. The author points out that this marked the commoditization of cyber weapons. They weren't just for governments or elite hackers anymore. They became a market asset that could be bought, sold, and traded. Vulnerabilities became investments, and attack capabilities became a service you could put a price tag on. Part 2. WannaCry, a global digital apocalypse. Once these state-level weapons were out in the wild, disaster struck. It led to the global ransomware nightmare known as WannaCry. On a Friday in May 2017, computers all over the world started turning red, one by one. The virus used the NSA's Eternal Blue code to spread like a digital plague. The UK's National Health Service, NHS, was hit hard. Hospital systems were paralysed, doctors couldn't see patient records, and surgeries had to be cancelled. Russia's Interior Ministry, FedEx, and even giant manufacturing plants all came to a grinding halt. The ultimate irony. While the virus was modified by North Korean hackers, the engine driving it, the most powerful part of the weapon, was a defense tool funded by American taxpayers and built by the NSA. It proved that in the cyber world, any weapon you build will eventually be turned around and fired back at you. Conclusion: the new arms race. By connecting TAO, the Tumblr auctions, and WannaCry, the author reaches a chilling conclusion. We've entered an era of cyber weapons proliferation. In the past, arms proliferation meant nukes and missiles. Today it means vulnerabilities and malware. These weapons have no physical form. They can be copied infinitely, spread instantly, and are nearly impossible to trace. Once they're out of control, the fallout is much harder to clean up than a traditional war. Sanger also notes the impossible dilemma for governments. If they disclose a vulnerability, society can patch it up and stay safe, but the government loses its offense edge. If they keep it secret, they have a weapon, but if that weapon ever leaks, the whole world is at risk. There's no perfect answer, but WannaCry proved that when things go wrong, It's innocent people who pay the price. Chapter 5. Putin's Troll Farm and the DNC Email Leak. This chapter reveals how Russia used nothing but ones and zeros to play a superpower, like the US, like a fiddle. Part 1. The Secret Office Building in St. Petersburg. The story starts in St. Petersburg, Russia, in a building that looks like your average boring office block. But this wasn't some import-export firm. It was the notorious Internet Research Agency, IRA, better known as the Troll Farm. The book spills the details. Inside, the employees weren't your typical office workers. They were professional keyboard warriors. Their daily KPI was simple: create thousands of fake accounts on Facebook, Twitter, now X, and Instagram. They didn't just post random comments. They had strict targets to steer the conversation around American current events, racial tensions, and gun control. They were like actors. Some played the role of a patriotic Texas vet, others a Black Lives Matter activist, or a single mom, or a frustrated youth. Their only goal? To make Americans feel like anyone who disagreed with them wasn't just a neighbor with a different opinion, but an actual enemy. Part 2. Precision. Outrage marketing. These trolls weren't just shouting into the void. They used data analysis and psychological research to hit different groups exactly where it hurt. They didn't tell everyone the same story. They tailored the content based on your gender, age, income, and political stance. They would target the most radical groups in swing states and feed them fake news or extreme rants. For example, they'd fabricate news about Hillary Clinton being terminally ill, or claim a candidate was coming to snatch your guns. If you cared about crime, they fed you crime news. If you cared about the economy, they fed you unemployment stats. If you cared about faith, they fed you stories of religious persecution. The genius, and the evil of this, was that these posts were designed to trigger fear and anger. When you're angry, you stop being rational, and you start sharing. The Russians didn't even have to do the heavy lifting. Americans were tearing their own society apart for them. Part 3. The time management of the DNC email leak. The third case is the infamous DNC email leak during the 2016 election. Russian hackers, known as Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear, successfully hacked into the Democratic National Committee servers and stole tens of thousands of emails. But the juiciest part wasn't the theft, it was their time management. The book describes how they didn't dump everything at once. Instead, they released it like a Netflix series, cliffhangers in every episode, making sure every leak landed right in the middle of a news cycle to keep the fire burning. This wasn't just a tech op, it was a psychological art form. You don't even need to lie, you just need to release the truth at the exact moment it causes the most damage. The most classic example, right after an old highly negative recording of Donald Trump, the Access Hollywood tape, was leaked, WikiLeaks just happened to drop a new batch of DNC emails less than an hour later. It successfully diverted the world's attention and caused Hillary Clinton's campaign to bleed out at a critical moment. The takeaway: emotion is the weapon. By connecting these cases, the author makes a chilling point. The most effective weapon in modern political warfare isn't a lie, it's emotion. You can debunk a lie, but once you ignite an emotion, you can't take it back. When a society is filled with rage and suspicion, rational debate just leaves the room. The author also points out that social media algorithms aren't necessarily evil, but their logic is a perfect match for those trying to manipulate us. Platforms want you to stay longer and click more. Anger and controversy are the best fuel for that. This creates an unintentional partnership between the platform and the manipulator. One wants traffic, the other wants chaos. Different goals, same result. The conclusion is both ironic and depressing. The biggest security flaw in a modern democracy isn't the system, it's human nature. We are hardwired to react to negative news and to accept information that confirms our own biases. A manipulator just needs to give us a little nudge and we'll split the society ourselves. No soldiers or invasions required. Sanger wants to remind us, when the information you see every day has been carefully curated to trigger you, you might think you're making a free choice, but you're really just picking from a menu someone else wrote. Freedom still exists, but it requires a lot more awareness and a lot more self-protection. Chapter 6. Shadow Hackers. When a thief steals your gun to kill. Right at the start of Chapter 6, the author gives it to you straight. In a cyber war, you don't just hit your target, you hit the neighbor, the guy across the street, and the innocent bystander downstairs. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and nobody is truly out of range. Part 1. The Trojan horse in accounting software. Russian hackers, codenamed Sandworm, pulled off a move that was as brilliant as it was cruel. They didn't attack the government directly. Instead, they went after a small accounting software company called Doc. In Ukraine, this software is everywhere. If you want to file taxes or do business there, you basically have to install it. The hackers hijacked Doc's update server and hid malicious code inside what looked like a totally normal software update. As a result, every accountant, bank, and even engineer at the Chernobyl nuclear plant who clicked update was personally inviting a Russian Trojan horse into their system. The nastiest part? It exploited the user's trust in official updates, turning a defense mechanism into an infection highway. The irony here is insane. The victims weren't just the intended targets, but also allies, business partners, and even Russian companies themselves. What started as a state-level conflict turned into a global corporate catastrophe. Part 2. Musk. A digital apocalypse and a miracle in Ghana. The virus quickly spread from Ukraine to the rest of the world, and the biggest victim was Musk, the global shipping giant. One computer in Musk's Ukraine office had Doc installed. Once the virus got in, it used the NSA's Eternal Blue weapon, the one we talked about in Chapter 4, to tear through Musk's internal network. Within minutes, the cranes at 76 ports worldwide stopped moving. Tens of thousands of computer screens went black, and even the headquarters phone system died. The book describes this as a digital apocalypse. Maersk was forced to reinstall 4,000 servers and 45,000 PCs. They only survived because of a literal miracle, a power outage in Ghana. One single server in their Ghana office happened to be offline during the attack, which saved the only intact backup of their data. Maersk actually had to fly someone to Ghana to hand-carry that hard drive back to London just to save the entire company. And here's the crazy part. Maersk wasn't even a target. They were just stray bullet victims. The virus was designed to spread automatically like wildfire. It didn't care who you were. A shipping company that had nothing to do with geopolitics ended up suffering billions of dollars in losses. Part 3. Collateral damage. A war without borders. Sanger uses this chapter to reflect on a hard truth. Cyber war has no borders. Russia's target was Ukraine, but because the global supply chain is so tightly connected, the fire couldn't be contained. Beyond Maersk, huge names like the pharma giant Merck, FedEx's TNT, and even Russia's own oil companies were hit. This is what we call collateral damage. The author points out that attackers always underestimate the self-navigating power of a virus. You think you're firing a bullet at an enemy, but you're actually starting a forest fire that burns down the whole world. In a traditional war, collateral damage means physical destruction. In a digital war, it means bankruptcies, broken supply chains, paralyzed hospitals, and the total collapse of public services. The most bitter irony is that this damage hits people who aren't even involved in the conflict. You didn't take a side. You didn't do anything wrong, but your hospital, your bank, or your port still crashes because of someone else's war. Conclusion: who is responsible? By the end of the chapter, the author raises a very real question. When a weapon self-replicates, who is responsible? If a missile hits a civilian area, you can trace the responsibility. But if a virus is released, mutates, and spreads globally, the blame becomes blurry. Is it the designer, the policymaker, or just the flaw in the system itself? In the digital age, the cost of a mistake is almost always paid by innocent people. Chapter 7 and Epilogue. Welcome to the age of the Great Collapse. As for Chapter 7, if this book has sparked your curiosity, I'm going to leave that one for you to discover on your own. Trust me, it's worth the read. But let's wrap this up with the author's epilogue, which I can only describe as perfect despair. Sanger's final conclusion is chilling. This information war has no end date. Cyber weapons are considered perfect because they're cheap, nearly impossible to trace, and incredibly hard to defend against. The ultimate irony is that the more we rely on technology to improve our lives, the more vulnerable we become. Your smart fridge, your smartphone, even your smart utility meter, these could all be spies hiding in plain sight right in your living room. The digital dictators of the world are sitting behind their screens right now, laughing. They're watching the civilized and free Western world collapse collectively in the face of a few strings of code. Don't fool yourself into thinking the world is at peace. Every single day, 24/7, the US, China, and Russia are in the trenches of the deep web, buying and selling zero-day exploits to use against each other. In this global conflict, we, the ordinary people, are nothing more than plankton in a massive digital ocean. We're swimming in a sea of data, completely unaware of the monsters lurking beneath the surface. That's all for today's introduction. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you next time. Bye.